All right. Welcome to the Module 2 of Introduction to Cybersecurity course on the Cisco Networking Academy. Module 2 will be discussing attacks, concepts, and techniques. And in this module, we're going to be looking at analyzing a cyber attack, methods of infiltration, security vulnerability and exploits, and the cybersecurity landscape. Let's hop on to the first part. Types of malware. Cyber criminals use different ways and different types of malicious software malware to carry out their activities. And the use of malware is any code that can steal data, bypass access control, or cause harm to or to compromise the system. So knowing the different types of malware and how they spread is key to containing and so we're going to be looking at the different types of malware. And the first one we're looking at is the spyware. Spyware monitors your online identity and can log every key you press on your keyboard. Captures almost any of your data, including your sensitive personal information, such as your online banking details, your passwords, your national identification number, or your security numbers. So spyware does this by modifying the security settings on your devices. It often bundles itself with legitimate software or Trojan horses. We also have the hardware, and how the hardware works is that it installs itself in some software versions, and this hardware is automatically designed to deliver advertisements to you as a user, most often on your web browsers. Have you ever noticed that on your web browsers you find out you see ads that are common to you, maybe something you love to buy, something you love to purchase, or maybe something you recently searched a moment ago. So that's an example of how hardware works. You know when it's you know when you see it, it's hard to ignore when facing that constant pop-up ads on your screen. It's common for hardware to come with spyware. Another malware we have is backdoor. So this malware gains unauthorized access by bypassing the normal authentication procedures to access a system. So as a result, hackers can access sources within an application and issue remote system commands. So the backdoor works in the background and is difficult to detect. So when a backdoor is installed on your system, a malware is installed on your system that gives an attacker a backdoor access to your system, they can help you do stuffs without your knowledge. They can carry out actions on your systems without your knowledge. They can open software, install more virus malwares, install applications without your permission, send mails without your permission because they have an access to your PC that you are not aware of. Next, we have your ransomware. So the design of this malware is to hold a computer system or data contains captive until its user makes payments. So some versions of ransomware can take advantage of specific system vulnerabilities to lock it down. Ransomware is often spread through phishing mails that encourage you to download malicious attachments or through a software vulnerability. Now, for those gamers that love to download games from illegal websites, you have to be careful of ransomware. Um, because once they get into your PC, they encrypt all your files, and you'll just see note that tells you pay a brief amount of money in order to get access to your files again. Even if you pay that amount of money, there's no way you can guarantee that they can encrypt your file the second time because they're already on it. Another type of malware we'll be looking at is the scareware. Now, this type of malware creates or uses scare tactics to trick you into taking a specific action. So scareware may consist of operating system style windows and that warn you that your system is at risk. You need to run a specific. program to return to normal operation. Have you ever found out that on some websites, when you want to make a download, you'll see a pop-up that looks similar to a normal window pop-up that tells you scan your system for virus or download this antivirus right now. So that's an example of scareware. And if you agree to execute the specific program, your system will become infected with the malware. We also have the rootkit. The design of this malware is to modify the operating system to create a backdoor, which attackers can then use to access your computer remotely. So most rootkits use software vulnerabilities to access resources that should be that should not be accessible, and they modify system files. So rootkit can also modify system forensics and monitoring tools, making them very difficult to detect. If a rootkit has infected a computer, wipe the computer immediately and restore all required software, because there is no guarantee that even if you get the file app out, that the attacker has not installed the malware already on your system. We also have viruses. Now, I know it's common to call all malwares viruses, but a virus is a type of malware. A virus is a computer program that, when executed, replicates and attaches itself to other executable files, such as a document, by inserting its code, right? So most viruses require the end user interaction to initiate activation and can act on a specific date or time. So viruses can be lying around your computer system if you are not aware of it, because it has been programmed to execute at a particular date. So viruses such as those that display a funny image can be relatively harmless, or they can be destructive, such as those that can modify or delete your data. Have you ever noticed that some files are missing in your system? You might have a virus stored on your system. Have you ever noticed that you find new files on your desktop, on your folders that you never created? That could be a virus installed on your PC. So viruses can also be programmed to mutate to avoid detection. USB drives, optical discs, network, shares, or email spread most viruses. Another type of malware is the Trojan horse. So Trojan horses carry out malicious operations by masking its true intent. So it appears legitimate, but is very dangerous. Trojan exploits your user privileges, and image files are where you find them. So Trojan horses attach themselves to audio files, image files, or games. So unlike viruses, Trojan do not self-replicate, but they act as a decoy to sneak malicious software passed on threatening users. Just like I would always say and advise gamers who can't afford a legitimate copy of a software, it's good that you look out for Trojan horses. Another type of malware is worms. Worms are a type of malware that replicates themselves, and they spread from one computer to another. Unlike a virus that has a host program, worms run alone. Other than the initial infection of, they do not require user participation. Spread very quickly by network. Worms can spread from one as long as they are connected. The worms share similar patterns. Exploit system vulnerabilities, have a way to propagate themselves, and all contain malicious code. That malicious code is called the payload. Causes damage to computer systems, cause lagging to computer systems. The worms were responsible for some of the devastating attacks. On 2001, Code Red Worm infected over 300,000 servers just tonight. Wow, that's a lot. So let's look at what are the symptoms of malware. How do you know that system has been affected by a malware? Regardless of the type of affected system, you can look out for some common symptoms, and some of them would be an increase in the usage of the central processing unit. So if you go to your um, task manager, you go to your PC monitor, you check your CPU usage, and you're not typically running any software program that requires a huge amount of resources. Your CPU usage, the high side, needs to start doing, or maybe you notice your computer freezing or crashing off. Maybe you see the blue screen of death often. Just know that you might have been infected with a malware. When you see a decrease in your web browser speed, it will also be as a result of a malware. When you see an unexplainable problem with your network connection, it would also be as a result of a malware. When you find that your files are being modified or deleted, not by, it could also be a result of old malware. You find out that the presence of an unknown file or program on your desktop or icons could also have been infected with the malware. When you find out that in your process explorer, the processes that are not attached to any legitimate software you installed, that could be a malware running there. When you find out your programs turn off or reconfigure themselves, or you find out that you sent a mail and it wasn't you who sent that mail, just know that you might have been infected with a malware. So these are just few symptoms you should look out for. Methods of infiltration. One of the very common and effective of infiltration is social engineering. So social engineering is an attacker manipulating you to perform an action or divulging confidential information. Social engineers often rely on people's willingness to helpful, but also prey on their weakness. So for example, attacker will call an authorized employee with an urgent problem that requires immediate network access, appeal to them vanity or greed, or invoke authority by using name dropping technique in access. An example of or way in which social engineering is used by pretexting. So pretexting is when an attacker calls an individual and lies to them to gain access. For example, pretending to need a person's personal or financial data, confirm their identity. That's why banks will always tell you that they never call you on the phone request for your BVN or your passwords. That is a hiding there. Another method that social engineers would use is tailgating. Tailgating is when an attacker quickly follows an authorized person into a secure physical location, just like in organizations where you use access cards to access particular doors, that particular organization building. So attackers, which can be eternal, may not have access to that particular. So when a privileged user with access to that door opens the door, an attacker immediately sneaks into that door before the door closes. Another method of social engineering is something quid pro quo. So this is when an attacker requests personal information from someone in exchange for something like gifts. Have you ever seen a random chat on WhatsApp or on Telegram where someone asks you, um, perform a particular action due to your information there, and at the end of the day, you're going to get rewarded with a gift card? So that's social engineering there. Another method of infiltration is denial of service, DOS. So denial of service attacks are a type of network attack that is relatively simple to carrying out even by an unskilled attacker. So a DOS attack results in of network service devices, and this happens when there's overwhelming quantity of traffic. So this is when a network, this is not an approach to denial of service, right? By overwhelming the network with a high quantity of traffic. So when a network host or application sends an enormous amount of data, the rate this causes a slow transmission or response, or can even cause that particular server or device to crash. Another approach to denial of service is maliciously formatted packets. So when a packet is it collected or sent over a network, if it does not carry the appropriate format that that particular port is has been programmed from, or it can cause the device or the application to crash. So a packet, in its sense, is a collection of data that flows between a server over a network, such as the internet. When sending a maliciously formatted, the receiver cannot handle it. Let's look at an example. So suppose an attacker forwards packets containing errors or improperly formatted, an application cannot identify or and in that case, this will cause the receiving device to run very slowly or cause the application to crash or even the device to distributed denial of service. A distributed DOS attack or DDoS attack is similar to DOS attack but originates from multiple coordinated sources. So for example, an attacker builds in his botnet of infected hosts called zombies controlled by handler systems. So a zombie computer will constantly send and infect more, creating more and more zombies. When ready, the hacker will instruct the handler system to make the botnet of zombies carry out denial of service attack. So this handler system will order all zombies to send malicious packets or wrongly formatted packets over a network. That will cause denial of service. Botnet. Botnet is typically infected by visiting an unsafe website or opening an infected email attachment or media file. So a botnet is a group of bots connected through the internet that a malicious individual or group can have tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of bots, which a command and control server which a command and control server typically controls. So activating this bot boots malware, launches GDOS attack, distributes spam email, or executes brute force password. So criminals will often rent out botnets, third parties, for various purposes. Many organizations like Cisco force network activity through botnet traffic filters to identify any botnet location. So infected bots try to communicate with a command and control host on the Cisco firewall botnet filter is a feature that detects traffic coming from devices infected with malicious botnets. Cloud-based Cisco Security Intelligence Operations (SIO) service pushes down updated filters firewall that match traffic from new known botnets. Alerts go out to Cisco's internal security team, notify them about the infected devices generating malicious so that can prevent, mitigate, and remedy this. Another approach or method of infiltration is on-path attacks. On-path attacks attackers intercept or modify communications between devices such as the web browser and the website, collect information from or impersonate one of the devices. This type of attacker refers to man in the middle or man in the mobile attack. Let's look at the man in the middle first. So a man in the middle or MITM attack happens when a cyber criminal takes control of a device without the user's knowledge. With this level of access, an attacker can intercept and capture user information before it sends it into its intended destination. So using this type of attack often steals financial information, There are many types of malware that possesses the man-in-the-middle attack capability. Then man-in-the-mobile is a variation of man-in-the-middle attack. So man-in-the-mobile is a type of attack used to take control over a user's mobile device. So when infected, the mobile device's instruction exfiltrates user-sensitive information, sends it to the. So Zeus is an example of a malware package, man-in-mobile capability. It allows attackers to capture two-step verification SMS messages sent to users quietly. Another method of infiltration, very common, SEO poisoning. So you probably heard of search engine optimization. So that's actually what SEO is. And this is about improving an organization's website to gain greater visibility, search engine results. Search engine such as Google work by presenting a list of search engines such as Google work by presenting a list of web pages based on their search queries. These web pages rank according to the relevance content. While many legitimate companies specialize in optimizing websites better position, attackers take advantage of popular search, use SEO to push malicious sites up search results. So this technique is also called SEO poisoning. So the most common goal of SEO poisoning is to sites may host malware or attempt social engineering. Have you ever searched for a particular website on Google and you end up not seeing original websites as expressed on the search result? That is it. Another method of infiltration is password attack. So entering a username and password is one of the most popular forms of authentication websites. So therefore, uncovering your password is a easy way for cybercriminals to gain access to most of your valuable information. That's why we have multi-factor. So let's look at these different means with password attack. First is password spray. So this is a technique attempt to gain access to systems by spraying a few commonly used passwords across many. For example, a cybercriminal uses password 123 with many usernames before trying again with second such as UWERTY. This technique allows the perpetrator to remain undetected and avoid frequent account lock. That's why when setting up passwords, some applications or websites will tell you do not use password as your password, not use username as your password because attackers are out there trying your usernames as password to access your account. Another um, method of password attack is dictionary attacks. So a hacker systematically tries every word in a dictionary or a set or a list of commonly used words as a password to break into password protected account. Another means of password attack is brute force attack. So the simplest and most commonly used way of gaining access to a password protected site is the brute force attack. So this way, brute force attack sees an attacker using all possible combinations of letters and same the password space on get it right. So it's just like a trying to hack into a pin. So the pin uses just digits, right? Numbers. And since there are 4 digits, you know that you have 919 or one. Yeah, you have 1000 options or 1000 combinations of. You start from 0001, 0002, all the way to 999. You get the exact number. So that's an example of a brute force attack. Another method of password attack is rainbow attack. Passwords in the system not stored as plain. but as hash values. So hash values are numerical values that uniquely identify data. The rainbow table functions an extensive recomputed hashes and passwords. So unlike a brute force attack that has to calculate each, a rainbow attack compares the hash of a password with those stored in the rainbow table. So when an attacker finds a match, high password used to create another example of password attack is trafficking. So by intercepting communication with other humans, um, attackers can read plain text or unencrypted password. If you store a password or if you store a password in clear readable text, anyone who has access to your account on the whether authorized or unauthorized. This is also done by using softwares that can read packet network. Another method of infiltration is advanced persistent threats. So attackers also achieve infiltration through advanced persistent threats. And this is a multi-phase, long-term, stealthy, and advanced operation against a specific. For these reasons, an individual attacker often lacks the skill sets, resources, or competence to perform advanced persistent threats. So, due to the complexity and skill level required to carry out such an APT is usually well funded and targets organizations or nations for business or political reasons. So its primary purpose is to deploy customized malware one or more of the target systems in the undetected. Security vulnerability and exploit. There are several vulnerabilities which can occur or which a system or device can have. Looking at them one after the other. Have hardware vulnerabilities for meltdown and vector. So another word for meltdown is hardware vulnerability. Hardware vulnerability are most often the result of hardware design flaws. For example, the RAM. You know how your random access memory pieces are? Have a lot of capacitors, and these capacitors hold electric charges. And most of the time, they are installed on the RAM close to one. So, due to their proximity, changes applied to one capacitor can influence its neighboring capacitor. This design flaw creates an effect called row hammer. So, by repeatedly accessing or hammering a row of memory, the row hammer exploit triggers electrical interferences and eventually corrupt the data stored inside. Looking at the meltdown aspect more deeply, Google security researchers covered meltdown as two hardware vulnerabilities affect almost all CPUs released since 1995 in desktops, laptops, servers, smartphones, smart devices, and cloud services. So attackers exploiting these vulnerabilities can read all memory from a given system, data handled by other applications. So the data handled by other applications called Spectre. So the meltdown and Spectre vulnerability exploitations refer to side channel, which is the implementation of a computer system that allows it to gain information. So they can compromise large amounts of memory data because of numerous times the attack the attack runs on this minimal possibility of a crash or other errors. So errors in the operating system or application code usually introduce software vulnerability. For example, the sinful knock vulnerability allowed attackers gain control of enterprise-grade routers such as legacy Cisco ISR routers from which they could monitor all network at other network. That's software vulnerability. So when an altered iOS version installs on the router, this vulnerability introduces into the system, or this vulnerability is introduced into the system. So to avoid this, you should always verify the integrity of the downloaded iOS image since if it's such equipment authorized house on. So one of the ways that software vulnerabilities are when people go online to download the update or it on their devices. For example, um, someone's device may not be compatible with software updates from a proper store. Let's assume from Apple Store, right? Your iPhone cannot accept the latest iOS version. So you now go online, download an ISO file of latest iOS version, use a software to install it on iPhone. Now that can create vulnerability in your iPhone because your iPhone does not have all the hardware requirements to run that particular operating system of. So most security vulnerabilities fall into several main categories. One of them is buffer overflow. So buffers are memory areas connected to an application. So when writing data beyond the limit, the vulnerability of by changing data beyond the boundaries of a buffer, one can access memory. This can lead to a system crash, data compromise, or provide violation of privacy. Another example of security vulnerability is non-validated input. So programs often require input, but this incoming data could have malicious content, unintentionally forces the program to give. For example, consider a program that receives an image processing. Malicious user could have an image file with invalid image dimension, maliciously crafted dimension, cause the program to create buffer incorrect and expected sizes. That is an example of another category of software vulnerability is race conditions. So this vulnerability describes a situation where the output of an event depends on ordered or output inputs. So a race condition became a source of exposure when required order of not occur in the correct order or at the proper time. Another category is weakness in security practices. So authentication, authorization, and encryption protect systems. Developers should use security techniques that have already been created by some bodies global instead of attempting to create their own security. Tend to create their own security algorithm will most likely introduce new. Another category is access control problem. So access control is the process of controlling who does what and ranges from managing physical access to equipment or detecting who has access to a resource, such as a file, what they can do with those files, such as reading the file, executing the file, deleting that file. So the improper use of access control gets me crazy vulnerable. So nearly all access controls and security um, practices be overcome if an attacker full access to target equipment. So for example, no matter the permission settings on the file, attacker can bypass the operating with the data directly off, right? If you set a file, if I take out a hard drive from someone's PC, plug that um a hard disk casing, connect that my system physically, I can actually access those that have been or that were in that person's. So still under security vulnerabilities, another one we need to look at software updates. So the goal of software update is to stay current and avoid exploiting Microsoft app that release patches and daily. Companies or organizations respect them or updating applications such as web browsers. So always update your application. Companies, almost all companies releases patches regularly just so that they can keep up change in security landscapes. So even though organizations put a lot of effort patch and patching software vulnerabilities, discover new vulnerabilities regularly. That's why some organizations use third party who specialize in finding vulnerabilities in software, testing, and testing dedicated to searching, finding, and software vulnerabilities before they can get exposed. Whose Project Zero is an excellent example of after discovering several vulnerabilities in various software used by Google formed a permanent team dedicated to find the vulnerabilities. Do a research on that. The security land or cybersecurity land. Let's look at cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrency is a digital money used to buy goods using strong encryption techniques, online transactions. Banks, government, and even companies like AT&T very aware of its jumping on currency bandwagon. Cryptocurrency owners keep their money in a virtual wallet. When a transaction of between owner of two digital wallets, the owners of two digital wallets, the recording of the is decentralized. The recording of details in a decentralized electronic takes place. This means carried out and self-managed, no interference from third parties such as central banks, government. Special computers collect data about the latest crypto transactions every 10 minutes, turning them into puzzles. Verification of these transactions go through a technical and highly complex process. This step typically involves an army of miners who work to solve mathematical puzzles and authenticate transactions. Once verified, the ledger is updated, electronically copied, created worldwide in the blockchain effectively. Now, still in the crypto world, cryptojacking is an emerging threat that hides a user's computer, mobile phone, tablet, laptop, or using the machine's resources to without the user's consent. Many victims of cryptojacking didn't even know they'd been hacked. Thank you for joining us in this module. Look forward to learning more in